Welcome to the third episode presented by MDS. In this Leadership Spotlight series, we will interview influential women in movement disorder society and we'll discuss their careers and the great achievements. I'm Tamini Capato, and on behalf of the Women in Movement Disorder subgroup, I'm delighted to present Professor Susan Bressman. She's a neurologist, director of the Bone and Thumb Strauss Movement Disorder Center at Mount Sinai in New York, and a Merkin Family Professor of Neurology at the Icahn School of Medicine. Good afternoon, Dr. Bressman, and thank you very much for agreeing to this interview.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Great. Well, I know you're interested in publications in the field of dystonia and Parkinson's disease. So my first question is, how did you come into the movement disorders field? And I'm also curious about what is your personal history with the Movement Disorder Society?
So how I got into the field was really fortuitous. I was going to be a stroke neurologist, actually. And Dr. Stanley Fahn, I was at Columbia, got this grant, this large grant to begin a dystonia center at Columbia. And he was recruiting people into the center. And I was just finishing my residency, and I was the chief resident. And he asked me if I would come and work in the center and really start up their genetics work on dystonia. It was like, whoa, what an opportunity. And in the center at that time, other than Dr. Fahn, was Bob Burke, who was a chief resident ahead of me. And he was somebody I really adored. And so it was very appealing. I thought, oh my God, what a great opportunity. I started to think more and more about being the first stroke fellow ever at Cornell. And I thought, no, this is special. This is something I really was interested in doing. I love the idea of working with Dr. Fahn and Bob Burke. And so somehow I got out of that fellowship. By the way, it wasn't easy. And stayed at Columbia. And really, that was the story for me because I was a resident there, and then I was a fellow from 81 to 83. And I stayed there through to 97. And that was an incredibly productive and important period for me. The MDS, the society, was just forming. I got firsthand to meet and talk to David Marsden, of course, Stan Fahn, the other founder of the society. So I think I was there from the ground up. It was really a very, very special time. I was really very lucky. And then, of course, dystonia, we had all this money to study dystonia. And it was like, you know, what is this condition? How is it inherited? What can we learn from these families that we were following? And that just blossomed over a relatively short period of time, I would say, from 80, and the people I met. So Xandra Brakefield, Laurie Ozelius, and Neil Risch were incredibly important to me personally. I learned genetics. I took a course up at Bar Harbor. I was mentored by the best, really. And this was, you have to realize, this was just the beginning of linkage analysis. I mean, we were using protein markers, then DNA markers. I mean, the technology was changing so quickly. And I just had such wonderful mentors. And we went on gene hunting. I mean, it was the most exciting sort of, and there was field work. I mean, we went all over the country to gather families, multiplex families, and to find linkage, and then eventually identify dystonia genes. It was like detective work. I felt like I was Sherlock Holmes. I was on this quest to figure out dystonia, and I was hooked. I was hooked for life.
Yeah. It was an excellent beginning, right?
Yes.
So moving forward a bit, probably in your career, you've seen many shifts in the field. Yeah. Have you seen shifts toward looking at the development of a woman's career, for example? And if so, what shifts do we have to looking forward to in our society, the movement disorder society, in next years? Can you please elaborate on that?
So, I was thinking about this. When I started, it was really a totally male dominant field. And there was something of a boys' club. And I was a bit of an outsider. But I was also in the generation where medical school was shifting from 5% women to 25% women, and now to 50% women. So the numbers were in our favor, that we were going to be able to work with other women. And personally, I had Stan Fon and Neil Risch and David Marston, these incredibly brilliant, hardworking men. And I think they taught me a lot in terms of work ethic and setting the bar high and intellectual honesty and curiosity. But then pretty quickly, as women came into the field, I met Carly Tanner. I met Cindy Camello. We became friends, and then many other women that I got to meet, at the MDS meetings, giving talks, Tanya Samuni. I mean, our fellows increasingly went from male fellows to women. And so naturally, this networking began. And I think, so that is a big part of it, being supportive, finding each other, supporting each other. And the other thing is taking opportunities. I was thinking about this. In 1997, I wasn't looking to become chair of a department, but it was offered to me. And I tell you the truth, I was reluctant. But then I said, this is a great opportunity. I love Columbia, but it's time to make a change. And so I jumped into it. And I think that's part of what is happening to women, to take those opportunities, not be fearful, become confident in your own skill set to be a leader. Know that you're going to make mistakes, of course, and some things are just going to be uncomfortable, but you'll grow, you learn. And I think it's part of like learning to be confident, having the courage, and having other women around you to support you. I think that's really critical. But there was one other thing I was going to say, as I noticed, I guess it was about almost 20 years ago, I was directing a course. I think this was at the Academy. And I realized I had picked only women speakers. I mean, that was my network, right? So those were my friends. And I said, I'm doing what the guys did 20 years earlier. I need to not be biased, and I need to be fair and open it up. So at the same time, I'm sort of a feminist and I love supporting other women, and I do what I can, and my heart is there. I also, and we have to be aware of it, aware of biases and being fair and open to the guys. So it's, I think we're in a very interesting position right now of, grabbing, taking what is correctly ours based on our expertise, our skill set, and building on that. But, really also having a wide view and being aware of our own biases, racial biases, gender biases. So we really make the field open, really open. Yeah.
Yes, with these comments, we can see clear your vision as a woman in movement disorders. And do you have any concrete projects in mind in this regard? Tell us about that.
In terms of women?
Women, in terms of leadership, or in terms of starting a career?
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things now as a movement disorder center that, we have to think about and build on is how we train the next generation of movement disorder specialists and what we are handing off to the future. And I think personally, and I think this is something special I think we as women can bring to the table, is this patient-centered universe. There's a lot of empathy and there's a lot of identification with caregivers, with women with PD, childbearing issues. I'm now dealing this with a whole generation of dystonia patients that now want to become pregnant, early onset PD patients who want to become pregnant. So I think being really sensitive to this patient-focused universe and how we as women train, how we train women, men, all our fellows, what we teach them carrying forward in terms of compassion and kindness. Yes, of course, the research, the discipline, learning what you need to learn to make important changes so we advance treatments, that's critical. But the other piece is how we train and what we bring to the table and how we keep the patient in mind. We never lose that. And I think that is something that I'm uniquely interested in, and how we design fellowships, how we help our fellows get jobs, how we, what we can do to facilitate that transition in career, I think is very important. It's something we in the Movement Disorder Society can really think about.
Yes. So do you see future challenges for the all health-allied women in movement disorders? Great. Yes. So we'll move to the next question. Who was the woman in your life who had the greatest influence, who you are now today?
Is this a woman in movement disorders?
Yeah, so you can choose one.
Okay, because I was going to say my mom. Okay.
On the personal life, yes, thank you.
For sure, in my personal life, it was my mother. And I would say that her fortitude and her belief in me was critical. So I think that was and also I think even through, and I was going to say this, this transition in career, having children, how are you going to raise your children and have a career that's so meaningful to you? I think she was so supportive and gave me confidence that I could do it. This was not beyond my reach. This was an obtainable goal, was critical. I think in terms of my career, so when I was, this is not a movement disorder person, there were so few women in movement disorders who were generationally ahead of me. So I would say, it's very hard for me to pick a mentor there. They were really all women. I mean, in medical school, I had Linda Lewis, who became the dean of students. So there was a neurologist, very strong woman, tough lady, spoke her mind, and really, she was fabulous with patients. She was unbelievably good. Communicating, caring for their, I went on rounds with her one morning, and there was this patient in bed who clearly couldn't feed himself, and she fed him. I was like, oh, here is my neurology professor feeding the patient because there was nobody around. And I thought, it was that kind of, in the moment, giving to the patient. She was really a great example. I think she's one of the reasons I became a neurologist. Then once I was in the field, I would say one woman I really looked up to was Carly Tanner. And I think it was because she was so courageous. I mean, she went off to China. She went and got, she learned epidemiology, became an expert epidemiologist. I just thought that courage, ability to always learn new things, reach out, always a team player, really building the science, building the epi with this fabulous team. So I was really, and to this day, am amazed with what she can do. So she's a colleague, but also a role model. Yeah.
It's great to hear about this support. It's amazing. So you're going to our last question. And can you speak a little about how do you define success for the young woman coming to the field? And if you do have any types?
Yeah, I think so. I get tremendous joy out of what I do. I mean, it makes me feel like I have meaning in life. And I love when I see that in young women who I can see are joyful, really joyful about coming to work. COVID's been so difficult and it's created all kinds of barriers. But I mean, for me, with my fellows and with the residents too, it's also in some ways brought us closer. And each communication is very important. So I think that by just observing these, my sort of the trainees, all these wonderful trainees, and trying to help guide them so they can really enjoy their work. You know, it may be, there are so many family issues, personal issues, health issues,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to be given the space to take care of those important parts of your life. Exercise. I have some fellows that if they don't run a certain amount of miles every day, they're not good. They need that space. They need that room, that time with their child, their maternity leaves. I mean, so you need to give yourself the personal space, the family space, so you can go back and really enjoy the work and find the piece of the work you really like. And, you know, that's also different. I mean, some women, it's the patient connection. For others, it's the research, it's writing the paper, it's having a paper accepted, that pride in your research accomplishment, having a grant funded. So, you know, being in touch with yourself, knowing what gives you pleasure, and making sure that you do that at work, that you get that out of work and you make the connections you need to make so you can accomplish those ends.
Great. That's important advice, right?
Yeah.
So, Dr. Bressman, thank you very much for your time, for sharing with us your inspiring career history. And it was a great honor for me having you here today.
My honor too. It was a pleasure. Thank you.